Welcome, everybody. I'm Karen Monkman, president of CIES this year, and welcome to the International Travel Awards ceremony, where we are here to celebrate the two travel award awardees, International Travel Award awardees. I'm going to introduce Kara Brown, who's our award chair, and she will then introduce this particular awards chair, and we'll go on from there. So Kara Brown is an associate professor in the Department of Educational Studies at the University of South Carolina. She's also a past co-chair of the Language Issues SIG at CIES. Her research is on language policy and equity in education in Estonia and the Southeastern US. She has served as awards chair twice. This is her second year and has done a stellar job. So, thank you, Kara.
Thank you, Karen. All right, welcome everybody to the International Travel Award virtual ceremony. It's great that you found us. I'm going to share a little bit about the award itself, its history, and then introduce the wonderful chair. So the CIES International Travel Award for Distinguished Service in Education Reform was established in 2009 under the then presidency of Dr. Gita Steiner-Kamsi through an endowment from the George Soros and Open Society Institute, and consolidated in 2012 under the presidency of Dr. Waduge to encourage distinguished researchers and practitioners from the Global South to participate in CIES conferences. Launched at the 2009 annual conference, the endowment attempts to facilitate the participation of international education experts who serve in countries where international projects are implemented. This year we had the fabulous Dr. Flavia Ramos-Matusi, who is a senior research associate at the Learning Systems Institute at Florida State University and the associate director of the Learning Systems Institute Center for International Studies and Educational Research and Development, chair the ITA committee. So I want to thank her and the committee members for their hard work. Dr. Ramos-Matusi is interested in intercultural and transnational collaborations, capacity building and professional development at all levels of education, and designing research tools that explore the intersection of biographical storytelling and socio-political structures that impact education and shape cultural norms and behaviors. She is currently working on a USAID-funded project in Uzbekistan. We will now move to two recordings that were done at the CIES conference in April 2022. So stay with us.
Hello, everyone. We are here in Minneapolis for the CIES 2022 conference, and we have our awardee for the International Travel Award. The purpose of the International Travel Award, the ITA, is to encourage distinguished researchers and practitioners from the Global South to participate in CIES conferences. The award is contingent on attending and presenting in person at the CIES 2022 in Minneapolis. Dr. Waruni Chandrasena is a filmmaker, researcher, and postgraduate student at the Saripalli campus at the University of Colombo, Sri Lanka. She has demonstrated previous contributions to the international development and education sector, extensive research and practice in education equity in the public education system. She uses documentary film as a novel way to unearth and portray undocumented history and experiences of a marginalized community in Sri Lanka. And she has already presented at the CIES on Children of Cemetery Dwellers, documenting education and social exclusion in Sri Lanka. And now I want to introduce you to Dr. Chandrasena, and I have a few questions for you.
Yes, thank you so much.
And I'm very glad that you made all the way from Sri Lanka to cold Minneapolis in April. And I would like to ask you, how did you become a filmmaker?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's not an accidental thing. I studied in science medium in school, and then at the same time I wanted to practice art, and also I wanted to be a pianist, but I couldn't make it. But later on I get into the field of photography. I wanted to be a photographer, And on the second year of my photography course, I wanted to be a cinematographer. And then I became a first female cinematographer of the country. At the same time, I met up with some film experts around the globe, and then I get the exposure from them and got a chance to take a part of the workshops on documentary filmmaking. And this is how I get into documentary film industry and to become a documentary filmmaker.
This is fantastic. And later I would ask you where people can see your documentaries. For now, my question for you is, if you demonstrated your skills with these documentaries in terms of as a filmmaker, how do you make the connection of what you're doing, like the content of your films and documentaries, into using this to portray the life experiences of those who are excluded or discriminated against or invisible people? How do you make that connection to the field of international comparative education? How do you use those films as a tool for social change or changes in education and social inclusion?
Yeah, that's a good question, because education always connected with the terms of development. There are many different forms of development, but education is, as I realized, one of the main root cause. And then when I met up with the people and I get into many layers of the societies, when I observe all these social, cultural, and political issues, and then again all these issues connected with the another parallel layer of education, and then I wanting to document and portray the life of the people and the social, cultural, and political issues. And then when I bring it to the public audience, which make a contact or make bridge in between the community and the educators, policymakers, activists, and general public, and then it really makes a platform to discuss about the subject matters and the community and rest of the other issues. This connectivity interconnected with the terms of education and what we do, institutional education and non-institutional education, which all connected things. And then this contribution is not directly, but indirectly to the education. So it is a responsibility of the educators, advocates, and academics to analyze and bring it to the discussion to make most possible transformations towards the humanity. And this is the connectivity that I see through the film and the sectors of education, because the films are really reflecting the life of the people. And then through analyzing those documentaries or the visuals or the visual media, it's one of the best tools to understand the issues or the problems. Without understanding the issues or the problem, we are not being able to find out solutions. So this is one of the main connectivity that I can see through the visual media and the education.
This is fantastic, and you're telling me that you're the first filmmaker or documentary maker in Sri Lanka. So I'm going to ask my last question in terms of being a woman filmmaker and also the medium that you use that relies on having the proper infrastructure for disseminating that. How do you disseminate your work? What might be some of the challenges that you encounter as a woman filmmaker and disseminating that to the people who are actually being portrayed in these documentaries? And also if you can tell us where to find them.
Yeah, so I'm the first female cinematographer. There are plenty of filmmakers and women filmmakers, very few. All my documentary films are not in online, but if there's a venue that I could screen the films, I'll get a chance to screen. But these the venues that we can screen the movies are limited and lacking unless we send the films to international audience or international audience. So for the documentary filmmakers where they are not being recognized much as feature filmmakers. So very limited venues that we can screen the films unless the institutions or education institutions screen the documentary films. But one of my films portray education of marginalized community and their children is online, which is on YouTube. You can find that movie, Children of Cemetery Dwellers, on YouTube. The other film that I portray disability, this film focused on disabled women in Sri Lanka, which is on a Vimeo, which is not in YouTube. But the other movies that I've done, not online, then if someone wanting to research or study those movies, I can provide the link and the password to watch the documentaries. One film portrayed about the fishing community in Western Sri Lanka, and the other film that I made to the University of Durham, which is focused on human tissue donation in Sri Lanka.
Thank you so much. And it's the first time that she has been to the CIES conference, so I hope that you keep coming back. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I'm so grateful to the CIES International Conference for awarding me this International Travel Award. Unless that, I won't be able to make it. And this is a great exposure that I can gain to rediscover in many layers of education and research. So this contribution is always appreciated. Both the contribution from CIES and rest of the other wonderful academics, activists who is presenting here in this conference, also virtually around the globe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm introducing Sifuti Nakasi. I have the privilege of reviewing the ITA applicants for the International Travel Award, distinguished contributions that they have made in their field. And I will introduce Mrs. Sifuti Nakasi is a human rights and advocacy officer at the Lesotho National Federation of Organizations of the Disabled. He has collaborated on research with Professor Christopher Johnson and co-authored a paper entitled The Democratization of Inclusive Education, Political Settlement, and the Role of Disabled People's Organizations. Tomorrow, on Thursday, April 21st, he will be presenting the role of organizations of persons with disabilities in the development and implementation of the Lesotho Inclusive Education Policy. And first, I know that, can I call you Sefuthi? Am I saying your name right?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay. You mentioned that you just have a different role. You have a new role in the organization where you work. Can you tell us more about what is the work that you do and how you contribute to the advancement and inclusiveness of all peoples with different types of abilities?
Thank you very much. Yes, my role has changed. I am now the Executive Director of the Lesotho National Federation of Organizations of the Disabled, and the mission of our organization is to advocate for, promote and defend the human rights of people with disabilities. So one of the issues that we are looking at as an organization is inclusive education, in which we are advocating for the inclusion of learners with disabilities at all levels in our education sector. So I am now responsible for designing and supervising the implementation of the organizational policies and programs, including programs on education.
And how did you get into this field? How you became interested, or how did you become to be who you are now and to be able to make these kinds of contributions?
Thank you very much. As a person with disability myself, I have been encountering a number of barriers in terms of access to education, in which we found our teachers not being able to help learners with disabilities, our environment being inaccessible for learners with disabilities, which ultimately made them to drop out and being unable to realize their future. And I joined Lanford in 2011, in which I was employed as the Human Rights and Advocacy Officer. And in this role, I was responsible for advocating for the inclusive policies and laws, including policies on education. So that's how I got to be involved in the education advocacy, focusing on policy environment that could enable people with disabilities to participate and learn on an equal basis with others.
And from your own experience, how do you compare what's happening now, if there is any types of advancements compared to the time when we are going to school in Lesotho? If you see big changes, or what kind of changes have you seen happening now?
Yes, there are a lot of changes in our education sector now. One big change is that our government has adopted the inclusive education policy in 2018 and was released to the public in 2019. And that inclusive education policy actually requires our education system to be inclusive and accessible for all learners, including those with disabilities. So this is a very good framework which enables inclusion, which was not there before, and which actually was not part of the education system, meaning children with disabilities and all other people who are learning were not actually protected by policy or law in their education, which was making it quite difficult for them to access education on equal basis with others. So with the advent of the policy, then we have the basis for our advocacy, and our government has been a little bit trying to involve organizations of people with disabilities to ensure that their views and thoughts are also considered, and they have been involved in the wide consultation in terms of how inclusive education must be implemented in our country.
And from policy to implementation to the actual changes happening on the ground, what is your vision for that? What would be the next steps? What do you think you'll be continue doing to promote and advocate for the rights of those, mostly students and teachers as well, in the education sector?
Yeah, we now have a policy, but the policy is just a paper that should be implemented. So we have not yet established a very strong framework for implementation. So we are at a stage whereby we want to have in place an action plan that will guide the effective implementation, so that all learners with disabilities can benefit out of the policy which has been adopted. So our focus now is on making sure that we ultimately put in place the action plan that will guide the efforts towards the implementation, so that it can be translated into action, and the learners as well as teachers can benefit out of that advocacy.
And not to take too much of your time, just from your own experience here at the CIES 2022 in Minneapolis, we were just talking before about your own experiences, and what suggestions would you have for the CIES community in terms of making accessibility for all, including the people who are coming to these conferences and working for comparative international education to make this more accessible to all.
First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this big event for inviting us to participate in these sessions. I think it has been a pleasure for me, and on behalf of my organization, I extend our deepest gratitude for being part of this activity. And I have also realized that there are good things going on in this workshop, and also there are some people who are working hard to ensure that the information is accessible. I have gone through the CIES website, and I have seen that it is accessible because I was able to navigate independently through my screen reader, which is one of the good things for this workshop. And I have also met a lot of people here who are part of the CIES Conference 2022, and I have learned a lot from them. But I also think that maybe for future events, it is still important to make sure that every workshop, every activity that we are doing is accessible and inclusive of all, including people with disabilities. And I think that could be easily achieved through the involvement of people with disabilities. If there are organizations of people with disabilities that are in Minnesota, it could be, or maybe anywhere else in the world, it could be very important maybe to involve them just to have their say on issues of activity, so that all the activities and sessions that are being conducted here are taking care of accessibility needs of everybody, including of those with disabilities. So I think that is very important, because if they are being consulted and they participate, then they will be able to say where there's still a need for maybe for improvement or for some changes that would enable more people with disabilities to participate. And the other thing is the issue of physical infrastructure. Like, we need to make sure that these kind of activities are held where it is very easy for people with disabilities to go around, and also to be able to identify the areas at which they are. Our elevators should be able to say where they are. Like, they should have that kind of voice prompt that could enable maybe blind people to know where they are while they are using them, so that they can also be able to access them. And I think the issue of the guiding blocks maybe on the pavement is also one of the good things that could enhance independence of maybe the blind people who are participating to feel at home.
So you're talking about both infrastructure and support in terms of choices of location, and also the medium that are being used at these conferences as well?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, and I hope that we enjoy the rest of the conference, that we can all learn more from you and your own experiences and what you're doing, from your contributions to people's disabilities, and in transforming the places to be accessible to all.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So congratulations to the 2 ITA awardees for this year. It's wonderful that you were able to join us at the ceremony, and we look forward to future contributions. And thanks again to Flavia for her wonderful work chairing the ITA committee, and for all of the committee members.
Yes, and I want to extend my congratulations also. And it was wonderful to meet the two of you who have come all the way from Sri Lanka and Lesotho. It was a joy to have some time to chat at CIES. We hope to see you next year too. And congratulations again. And we hope to see everybody next year at CIES. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.